A year ago on this weekend, if you're here only once a year, then I only speak about Wicked. So a year ago on this weekend, I spoke about my reflections on the end of the first part of Wicked, on defying gravity. So naturally, this year, after seeing the second part of Wicked, I am here to share some reflections on Wicked Part 2, and I'll make the same promise that I made last year, which is that there will be no spoilers, just some themes of the show. And if you feel that there's a spoiler, well then you're about 20 years behind, because the show came out a very long time ago. So at the end of Wicked, both the movie and the Broadway production, Glinda and Elphaba, the two main characters, are best friends who have become estranged. They have misunderstood each other, they've been pulled apart by both circumstances and choice, and they stand together in this really powerful moment one final time. They're about to say goodbye, possibly forever, and in that moment, they sing, I'm not going to sing it myself, because I knew you, I have been changed for good. As they sing, they're not just saying, you changed me. They're saying, I didn't fully understand the circumstances of our friendship as we were living it. I couldn't see how profoundly you were shaping me. But now, looking back, I realize I could not be who I am today without my friendship with you. There's something really bittersweet about this moment, almost tragic, about this kind of recognition that the two of them have. And it's actually something that happens to us quite often. Why do we only understand the importance of a moment or a relationship or a turning point after it has passed? Why does wisdom so frequently arrive too late? This question echoes in our Parsha this week, Parshat Vayetzei, because Jacob, after he wakes up from his dream, he realizes, I was standing on holy ground and I had no idea. When Jacob falls asleep in the wilderness and he dreams of a ladder with angels climbing up and down, he awakens and he says these really famous words of the Torah, Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh, V'anochi lo yadati. Surely God was in this place, and I did not know it. Rashi asks a very obvious question here. What does it mean that Jacob didn't know? He just had this incredible dream. Isn't that dream enough to know? But Rashi says, if Jacob had known that he was sleeping in such a holy place, he never would have slept there so casually. The not knowing part of his experience happened afterwards, not while he was sleeping there. Jacob was standing on holy ground, and he treated it like any patch of dirt. He didn't lack information, he just lacked awareness. Aviva Zornberg takes this further. She teaches that this I did not know it moment reveals something essential about all of humankind. We live our lives forward, but we only understand them backwards. Saying I did not know is simply part of consciousness itself. We experience life in real time, but the meaning of our lives comes later. We need the awakening to understand the dream. We need to leave a place before we can see what that place has truly become. Aviva Zornberg calls this belatedness. It's the gap between living and understanding, and there's no way around it. Jacob couldn't have known what that place was while he was sleeping there, any more than Elphaba and Glinda could have understood the full depths of their friendship while they were living it. But Jacob's awakening teaches us something crucial. Recognizing itself, the act of recognition, has power. When he declares, God was in this place and I did not know it, something changes in him. He doesn't just keep walking. He marks that moment. He names it. He lets this belated recognition transform how he moves forward. And we see that because the Parsha has two bookends. It starts with Jacob making a vow to God after his dream, an acknowledgement of God's presence that required angels and a divine vision to prompt it. And he does this by placing some rocks. And then it ends with Jacob and Laban establishing a covenant of boundaries and peace, also using stones and pillars. But something has changed, because at the beginning of the Parsha, God needed to interrupt Jacob. But by the end, Jacob knew to set up this pillar on his own. He intentionally marked the moment as sacred. The transformation isn't that Jacob can now avoid this idea of belatedness. He can't. None of us can. None of us can escape the gap between living and understanding. But Jacob has learned something else. He learned to practice awareness. He learned to look for God's presence, to mark the holy moments, and to pay attention. And this is where this teaching that I'm sure many of us know comes into place. It's Heschel's teaching of radical amazement. Heschel writes that spiritual life begins with radical amazement, a cultivated attentiveness to the wonder that is in our ordinary days. He insists that holiness is not rare. Our awareness of holiness is rare. He writes that our goal should be to live in radical amazement, to get up in the morning and look up at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. This is a practice that addresses Jacob's dilemma. Belatedness may be built into being human, but amazement can shrink the gap. It teaches us to ask, even in a mundane moment, what if I'm standing on holy ground right now? What if conversations, relationships, and routines that I treat as ordinary are actually full of meaning? This is also why the ending of Wicked hit so hard, at least for me. Musicals have a way of telling the truth with more honesty than prose. When Glinda and Elphaba sing about being changed for good, the music carries something that speech simply cannot. The longing to have known earlier what only becomes clear at the very end of their friendship. Art shows us what we wish we could see in our own lives, that the people we encounter, even briefly, leave fingerprints on who we become. This poignant end of that final duet is not just about their relationships. It's about ours. It's the ache of recognizing transformation only in hindsight. The show gives us a mirror. Are we paying attention to the people who are shaping us right now? Are we awake to love, to influence, to gratitude, to holiness before the final goodbye scene? So I invite you, how in our lives can we practice noticing holiness before it's become a memory? To look at the person beside you and think, this relationship is shaping me right now. To look at this stage of your life, even if it feels ordinary, and ask, what if God is in this place? We can't escape belatedness, but we can soften it. We can mark our moments, we can set our pillars, and we can choose presence while we're still in our own dreams. And when we finally look back, we can say, God was in this place, and this time I knew it. Shabbat Shalom.